Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're navigating a really fascinating collection of sources. They touch on everything from how information shapes our world, what you know about your government, right down to the blueprint of your being, and even how nations are sort of redefining sovereignty in this digital age.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission here is to go, well, a bit beyond the headlines. We want to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights from all these different topics.
Right.
We're trying to give you a shortcut, really, to being properly informed, uncovering some surprising facts, and hopefully those aha moments.
Exactly. So whether you're curious about India's role in the digital world, or maybe what your job might actually look like in the future,
Yeah.
or even the science behind understanding our own genes, you've definitely come to the right place. Okay, let's unpack this. We're kicking things off with something pretty fundamental, I think, to any thriving democracy. India's Right to Information Act, the RTI Act of 2005. It's designed, to empower citizens, ensure accountability. But our sources are highlighting that this vital tool is, facing some pretty significant pressures right now.
That's right. This act, which basically lets citizens get hold of government information, it actually grew out of a really powerful grassroots movement back in the 80s in Rajasthan.
Right.
And its core provisions are quite broad. They apply at all government levels. And importantly, Section 8.2 allows disclosure if the public interest clearly outweighs keeping something confidential.
Okay.
Section 22 even gives it supremacy, meaning it overrides inconsistencies in other laws. It's quite strong on paper.
But the picture isn't entirely rosy, is it? The Supreme Court, I gather, has expressed some serious concern over these chronic delays in appointing information commissioners.
Yes, serious delays.
I mean, think about this. As of 2024, the Central Information Commission had 8 vacancies. 8. And that led to over 23,000 pending appeals.
23,000. Wow.
And some state commissions have been completely defunct, just not working, since 2020. Really, it makes you wonder, is the system actually set up to work efficiently?
Well, that's a key takeaway here, isn't it? And add to that, many states still don't have online RTI portals.
Right.
Which just makes the whole process way more complicated for citizens trying to file requests. Plus, a significant number of the information commissioners appointed are retired bureaucrats.
Ah, okay. And that raises questions.
It does, yeah. Questions about impartiality, about the diversity of perspectives on these commissions. The Supreme Court itself, actually, in the 2019 Anjali Bhardwaj case, specifically pointed this out. They highlighted this urgent need for more diverse professional backgrounds in these really critical roles.
And this is where it gets, really impactful for the average person, I think.
Yeah.
The RTI Amendment Act of 2019. That dramatically reduced the autonomy of these information commissioners, didn't it?
It really did. It gave the union government authority over their tenure, their salaries.
Which sounds bureaucratic, but...
Yeah. But it fundamentally weakens the independence, the independence of the very officials meant to hold the government accountable.
Exactly. And then you have the Data Protection and Privacy Act, the DPDP Act from 2023. That brought in a blanket ban on personal data disclosure, effectively limiting public audits. Which is quite a stark contrast to the earlier RTI, which allowed disclosures if it was in the public interest.
So, yeah, if we sort of zoom out, the critical insight here is that the RTI Act, which was meant to be democracy's flashlight, you could say.
Yeah, like that.
It's now facing this kind of systemic dimming. Less information is potentially available for the public to see, and that can leave citizens a bit in the dark, right, when they need transparency on how power is being used.
So what's the way forward then? What do the sources suggest?
Well, the sources suggest a pretty clear path. Things like expediting those commissioner appointments, definitely diversifying the selection criteria, and extending RTI's reach. Think about public-private partnerships, sports bodies, cooperatives, even political parties for financial transparency. That's a big one.
Digital integration too, presumably.
Yeah.
Like a unified portal.
Absolutely key.
Yeah.
A unified portal, maybe even enabling post-free RTI applications through post offices to really help rural citizens.
Yeah.
It really brings home what Thomas Jefferson said, Information is the currency of democracy.
It really does. Strengthening RTI seems vital for a truly informed public. So I guess the question for you, the listener, is, how will you champion your right to know in this changing landscape? Okay, so if transparency within a nation is vital, what happens when critical information needs to cross borders? This next topic is fascinating. Let's dive into this groundbreaking concept. Data embassies.
Right.
India, for instance, is apparently in advanced talks to set up the UAE's first data embassy, likely in Andhra Pradesh.
Yeah. It sounds like something out of science fiction, doesn't it? A data embassy. But it's very real. It's essentially a secure data storage setup where a country's critical digital databases are hosted in another nation,
Okay.
hosted elsewhere.
And this is the crucial part, they remain under the original country's own jurisdiction,
Yeah.
legally speaking.
Ah, I see. So it's like sovereign digital territory abroad.
Exactly. It ensures they have uninterrupted access, even during disasters, cyber attacks, or, geopolitical conflicts. It acts like a digital pillar of sovereignty, a kind of virtual safe deposit box for a nation's most important data.
That's a wild concept. Paradigm shifting, really. But it sounds incredibly complex. What are the unforeseen risks or maybe ethical dilemmas that could pop up from granting this kind of extraterritorial digital sovereignty?
That's a really important question. And yeah, our sources definitely highlight several challenges. There's significant legal complexity, for one, just navigating jurisdiction and sovereignty issues across borders.
Very tricky. Then you have operational hurdles. You need incredibly high security, precise coordination between the two countries.
Makes sense.
And there are inherent security risks, right? Potential data breaches are always a concern. Plus, you have to comply with different privacy regulations in different places. Crafting the bilateral agreements for this stuff is incredibly time-consuming.
Okay, so with all those complexities, what's India's big picture? What's the vision for this cutting-edge approach?
Well, India's aiming big.
Right.
They want to become a global hub for data embassies.
Really? A hub?
Yeah. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, they're actually drafting policies right now to attract foreign investment for this. They're even proposing things like diplomatic immunity to shield the stored data from Indian regulations.
Wow, diplomatic immunity for data.
Exactly. And there are also plans for sovereign cloud just for India's national security data, plus state-level initiatives like Gujarat's IT policies, which are already attracting major data center investments.
This redefinition of digital borders, it has huge implications for global economies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's really compelling here is how countries are strategically using data as a new form of national power, not just for security,
Right.
but for economic growth, creating jobs. It's a whole new game.
It absolutely is.
Okay, speaking of economic shifts, let's talk about something that impacts literally everyone, the future of work. The World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs Report 2025. It outlines some pretty major shifts we can expect by 2030, and maybe not what you'd think.
Yeah, this report really drills down into it. It pinpoints the fastest growing roles are actually in frontline jobs, the care economy, tech, no surprise there, and also green transition jobs.
Okay, green jobs too.
But conversely, many clerical roles, think cashiers, data entry clerks, bank tellers,
Yeah.
they're clearly declining. Automation is displacing some jobs for sure.
Right.
But, and this is key, it's also creating entirely new ones in tech, obviously, but also in managing the machines themselves. So it's more of a dynamic evolution, not just a simple replacement scenario.
Gotcha. So what key technologies are pushing this change, and how do global demographics fit into these seismic shifts?
Well, digital access is transforming businesses everywhere. That's leading to really high demand for skills in AI. The report says a staggering 86%.
86%.
Yeah. Robotics at 58%, energy tech 41%. The green transition, as I mentioned, is boosting roles in renewable energy, environmental engineering.
Makes sense.
Demographically, you see interesting trends. Aging populations in high-income countries are driving up healthcare demand. Meanwhile, low-income economies desperately need educators, talent managers. Even geopolitical tensions are creating demand for security and cybersecurity roles.
This sounds like, well, a lot of change. So maybe the real aha moment here isn't just that jobs are changing, but that our whole definition of work is evolving.
Exactly.
It feels less about what you know, maybe, and more about how you adapt, how you collaborate with this rapidly advancing tech, maybe making human creativity, critical thinking more valuable than ever. What does this fundamentally mean for listeners thinking about their careers?
Precisely. The report really emphasizes this critical need for upskilling and for creating clear career paths so people can transition from those declining roles into the growing ones.
Right, practical steps.
Yeah, and it also highlights focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workforce. Crucially, fostering that human-AI collaboration to boost productivity. Governments are strongly urged to fund robust reskilling programs. Ultimately, it just underscores that adaptability. Adapting to these tech changes is absolutely paramount for building resilient labor markets.
Okay, so from global economics right down to the blueprint of life itself, our DNA, India has marked a truly historic milestone with the completion of the Genome India project. This feels like a massive leap into the future of health.
It really is a groundbreaking initiative. It launched back in January 2020, led by the Department of Biotechnology. The aim was huge. Sequence the genomes of 10,000 healthy individuals from 99 different ethnic groups across India.
Wow, 99 ethnic groups. That's incredible diversity.
It is. And it's a massive collaborative effort, too, supported by 20 scientific organizations, including the Indian Institute of Science.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't geneticists, can you break down what exactly genome sequencing involves? What does that mean?
Absolutely. It's essentially deciphering the precise order of the 3 billion DNA base pairs,
Okay.
the A's, C's, G's, and T's that make up the entire human genome.
Right.
Think of it like reading the complete instruction manual for a human being. It helps us understand not just physical traits, but more importantly, our individual susceptibility to diseases and how we might respond differently to treatment.
Right. So the potential for precision medicine seems immense. Tailoring treatments.
Huge.
But beyond the medical breakthroughs, what about the societal side? Or privacy considerations? Having such a vast database of India's incredibly diverse gene pool must raise some questions, right?
That's a critical point, absolutely. The potential is immense, yes, for identifying genetic risk factors linked to diseases that could revolutionize diagnostics, treatment. It directly advances precision medicine, like you said, enabling targeted treatments based on someone's unique genetic profile. It also significantly boosts biotechnology, fostering innovation in new diagnostics, new therapeutics. And it leverages big data using AI and machine learning for really advanced genetic analysis.
Well, the flip side.
But the larger question, as you rightly highlight, is how do we ensure the data sharing frameworks are robust? How do we make sure storage technologies can even keep pace with this exponential growth of highly sensitive information? And critically, how do we protect individual privacy throughout?
That's a global challenge in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
How does India's project stack up against similar efforts around the world?
Well, it's similar in ambition to some really pioneering projects, the UK Biobank, the International 1,000 Genomes Project, even the original Human Genome Project.
Yeah.
And India plans to expand this effort significantly, aiming to sequence up to 1 million genomes eventually. This initiative really positions India uniquely as a leader in genomic research, tailored specifically to its incredibly diverse population.
Okay, now let's pivot slightly. Let's get into some complex ethical dilemmas. These really highlight that tension between economic growth on one hand and environmental and social well-being on the other. We'll look at two specific cases from our sources, starting with the tragic long-running issues stemming from the Bhopal gas tragedy.
Yeah, Bhopal. A truly horrific event back in December 1984. That methyl isocyanate, or MIC, gas leak from the Union Carbide plant.
Still dealing with the fallout.
Still dealing with it. Today, the focus is on disposing of 358 tons of hazardous waste left over from that defunct plant. It was recently moved to the Pithampur industrial area in Dar district. The plan is to incinerate it at extremely high temperatures, 1,200 degrees.
It's just such a lingering shadow from the past. But the local residents near Pithampur, they've raised understandable concerns, haven't they, about potential health risks from the incineration, which has led to delays.
Understandable concerns, absolutely.
It feels like a classic balancing act, doesn't it? Between finally addressing this legacy problem, but also considering the potential new impacts on current communities.
Precisely. And this connects to a broader ethical quandary facing India right now. The repeated extensions given to thermal power plants to comply with sulfur dioxide SO2 emission norms.
Ah, yes, the power plants.
The initial mandate was way back in 2015. Deadlines were set for 2017. But it's been delayed 4 times now. The current deadline is December 2027.
4 times.
4 times. And shockingly, only about 7% of the power plant units have actually installed the required FGD systems. That's flue gas desulfurization systems.
Only 7%.
7%. And these systems are the crucial technology needed to significantly cut those harmful SO2 emissions.
This really feels like a direct conflict. Public health is basically being pitted against economic development goals here. What are the core arguments coming from each side?
It absolutely is a conflict. The thermal power plants, or TPPs, they argue that complying immediately would drastically increase their costs. And they claim it could affect energy supply stability.
Okay. The economic argument.
Right. But the counter-argument is stark. Non-compliance leads to prolonged, severe air pollution, and that directly translates into significant public health crises, respiratory illnesses, and so on.
So it raises that profound question about corporate responsibility, doesn't it? Should profit-driven companies be given this kind of leniency at the direct cost of societal health and well-being?
That's the core ethical question.
And what about the rule of law itself? The credibility of the regulations when you have these repeated extensions?
That's a huge point, too. Repeated extensions, frankly, they undermine the credibility of environmental regulations altogether. It sets a really dangerous precedent. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it really speaks to the challenge of intergenerational equity. Are we prioritizing short-term economic gains that cause long-term, possibly irreversible environmental damage for future generations?
That's a heavy thought.
It is. And transparency in the decision-making process here is critical. Plus, ensuring environmental justice for those vulnerable communities who often live near these plants, they bear the brunt of the pollution.
So what's the suggested path forward from the sources?
Well, the sources strongly suggest enforcing the deadlines, making them stick, incentivizing compliance perhaps, but also imposing meaningful penalties for non-compliance. Those seem like crucial steps forward.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive today. We've really covered a lot of ground. We've unpacked everything from ensuring transparent governance with the vital RTI Act to exploring that cutting-edge world of data embassies and how they're literally reshaping digital sovereignty. We also peered into the crystal ball of the future of jobs, where adaptability really seems to be the new currency.
We did. And then we delved into the transformative potential of the Genome India project, exploring how it could revolutionize medicine while also raising those new important questions about data privacy.
Right.
And finally, we confronted some of those really difficult ethical decisions facing India, trying to balance economic growth with crucial environmental and social justice.
Yeah. Our goal was really just to distill all this complex information into memorable nuggets. And we truly hope you found those aha moments along the way, maybe seeing how interconnected these seemingly separate topics actually are.
Absolutely. And maybe, as you reflect on these complex and interconnected issues, consider this thought. In this increasingly data-driven, hyper-connected world, what does it truly mean for you to be informed? And how does that personal understanding translate into collective action? How do we ensure that progress serves not just narrow economic interests, but the genuine well-being of all citizens and indeed the planet itself?